Okay, picture this. You've got the president of a country standing up in public, but it's not for some big policy thing.
Right.
It's to apologize, and specifically to apologize to a neighboring country.
Yeah.
That's pretty rare, isn't
It
it?
absolutely is. Highly unusual in diplomacy. Usually it's all very carefully worded statements.
Exactly.
hmm We started seeing these reports pop up about this recent spike in tension between Kenya and Tanzania.
And it all seemed to lead up to Kenya's president, William Ruto, making this very public apology.
That's the one. So we've gathered those reports, our sources for today.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, friends, our neighbors from Tanzania, if we have wronged you in any way, forgive us. Our friends from Uganda, if there is anything that Kenyans have done that's not right, we want to apologize if there is anything. To our children, if there is any misstep, we apologize. To our neighbors, if there is any misstep that we have done, we want to build the relationship that will make our country great and will take us forward. And to each and every one of us, I know today God in his own way has made it possible for us to build the bridges between our political parties. We now have a broad-based government that brings us more people, more citizens, more into one ecosystem that we can plan together, we can work together for the greater good of our nation.
And our goal really is to unpack them.
Yeah, let's try and piece together the sequence. Who are the key people involved? And honestly, how did social media get tangled up in this in such a, chaotic way?
And what does it all mean? What does this whole incident of the apology included tell us about the bigger picture, the dynamics in the region right now?
Because it's definitely not just high-level diplomatic talk, is it? The sources show it touches on activist rights, sovereignty issues.
Oh, yeah. And huge online fights, national pride.
Yeah.
It got personal, even down to politicians getting flooded with messages. It's quite a story.
Okay, let's dive in then. Every fire needs a spark. What was the ignition point here? What actually kicked all this off, according to the sources?
Well, the reports trace it back pretty clearly to several activists. They traveled to Tanzania.
Okay, why were they going?
Their aim was to attend the trial of Tundu Lissu. He's a very prominent opposition figure in Tanzania.
Ah, right. And do we know who these activists were?
The sources name a couple specifically, Boniface Mwangi from Kenya and Magather Atuhaire from Uganda. They were among those who went.
Got it. And I'm guessing things didn't exactly go smoothly for them.
That's putting it mildly, according to what they said after they were deported. It sounds harrowing.
What did they claim happened?
They alleged they were held completely incommunicado for several days, subjected to torture, and then basically just dumped at the border by Tanzanian security forces.
Wow. Torture claims. That's incredibly serious. That must have triggered immediate reactions, right?
Oh, absolutely. Widespread condemnation, especially from human rights circles. But it also went straight to the government level.
So, official protests.
Yes. Both Kenya and Uganda lodged formal protests about their citizens being detained. They specifically accused Tanzanian authorities of denying consular access, even though they'd apparently asked for it multiple times.
So it jumped from activist claims to a diplomatic incident almost overnight. What was Tanzania's position on this kind of thing? Or, their general stance before this happened?
Yeah, that's important context the reports give us. President Samia Suluhu Hassan had actually previously warned about this sort of thing.
Warned about what specifically?
She'd made it pretty clear she wouldn't stand for activists from neighboring countries meddling, as she put it, in Tanzania's internal affairs or causing chaos.
Okay, so she'd already drawn a line in the sand.
Pretty much. And it's worth noting, the sources say that when they were compiled, Tanzania hadn't officially commented on the torture allegations themselves. But that prior statement definitely sets a certain tone, doesn't it? Especially regarding foreign activists at a sensitive political trial.
It really does. Okay, so we have the incident, these awful claims, the official protests flying back and forth. and Tanzania's clear stay out message beforehand. Now, this is where it seems to go off the rails a bit, doesn't it? It didn't just stay between governments.
Not even close. This is where the whole thing exploded online. The digital world just took over.
How so?
The reports describe how the alleged mistreatment of Mwangi and Atuhaire basically triggered what one source calls an online war,
Okay.
mostly between social media users in Kenya and Tanzania.
An online war? That sounds dramatic. What were they fighting about online? What was the focus?
It seems the anger, particularly from the Kenyan side, quickly focused on Tanzania's president, Samia Suluhu Hassan.
Directly targeting the president.
Yeah. The reports detail Kenyan social media users really angry about what happened to the activists and the lack of clarity, just going after her online. Lots of vitriol.
Okay, so it leaps from detained activists to effectively online attacks on a head of state. That feels like a significant escalation. Did that digital anger filter back into the official Tanzanian reaction?
It absolutely did. You can't really ignore that level of online noise, especially when it's targeting your leader. It spilled right over into the Tanzanian parliament.
Really? What happened there?
The sources talk about a very heated debate that Monday. You could feel the outrage from the MPs, apparently.
I bet. What were they saying? What were the accusations?
Well, they were furious, accusing Kenyans online of cyberbullying, disrespecting Tanzanian sovereignty.
The meddling charge again?
Exactly. Meddling in domestic affairs.
Yeah.
And they were, very strongly defending President Samia, saying she had every right to protect Tanzania's interests.
Okay, so the parliament pushes back hard. But the online tit-for-tat didn't stop there, did it? What was the Kenyan reaction to those parliamentary comments?
Right. It just added fuel to the fire. Those strong words from the Tanzanian MPs, the accusations of disrespect, meddling it, angered some Kenyans even more.
And how did they react this time?
Very directly, it seems. The sources say they started sharing the contact information of some of those Tanzanian MPs online.
Wait, they doxed them?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Shared their contacts. And then apparently started flooding their phones with messages, texts, letting them know they weren't happy.
Flooding their phones. Wow, that's taking online anger into a very real, direct space. Do the reports give a specific example of an MP this happened to?
They do. They mentioned Jessica Msambadavangu, who's the MP for Iringa Town.
And what did she say about it?
She confirmed it happened. Said she got loads of messages, mostly through WhatsApp, apparently. So many that she actually had to switch her phone off for a while.
Just overwhelmed. That's intense. But the reports suggest her response wasn't just about being harassed, right? There was something else.
Yes, and this part is really fascinating. Despite all that, she took a surprisingly different approach.
How so?
She actually seemed to, welcome the engagement, in a way. She encouraged the Kenyans sending messages to counter ideas with ideas.
Seriously? After they flooded her phone?
Yeah. And she went even further. Suggested they should create a WhatsApp group so they could actually discuss things properly. She even promised to do a live session with them.
Hold on. She invited the people who were harassing her into a group chat for a discussion. That's completely unexpected. That's not the usual playbook for dealing with online attacks.
Not at all. It really stands out. And there's a quote from her in the sources that sums it up. Kenyans are our neighbors, our brothers, and we cannot ignore each other.
That's a powerful statement, especially contrasting with some of the more defensive rhetoric coming out of the parliament.
Definitely a different tone.
Okay, so let's recap the spiral. Activist claims, formal protests, online war targeting the president, parliamentary anger, then this direct digital retaliation against MPs like Msambadavangu, highlighting that online-offline connection, all this rising tension, and that sets the stage for President Ruto's apology.
Exactly. That's the backdrop. He delivered that apology publicly on a Wednesday.
And where did he do it? It wasn't like a specific press conference for this, was it?
No, it was during a national prayer breakfast.
A prayer breakfast. Interesting setting. Why then? Was there a particular trigger at that moment?
The report suggests he was actually responding to something said right there at the event. A visiting American preacher, Ricky Allen Bolden, had apparently just made a call for reconciliation.
Ah, okay. So the moment presented itself. How did Ruto phrase the apology to Tanzania? What were the words?
He was pretty blunt, actually, quite direct. The sources quote him saying, "To our neighbors from Tanzania, if we have wronged you in any way, forgive us."
Forgive us. That's unconditional.
Seems so. And he added, "If there is anything that Kenyans have done that is not right, we want to apologize." Very clear mea culpa towards Tanzania.
Okay. direct apology to Tanzania. But you mentioned earlier, the reports add another wrinkle here. Something about him addressing issues back home in Kenya at the same time?
Yes, this is a really interesting detail the sources highlight. In the exact same speech, at that same prayer breakfast, Ruto also apologized to young Kenyans,
Young Kenyans, why?
specifically the ones, often called Gen Zs, who've been really critical of his government, especially since those big anti-tax protests back in June.
So, wait, he uses the same platform, the same breath almost, to apologize to Tanzania for this diplomatic row and to young Kenyans critical of his policies.
That's what the reports indicate, both apologies in the same set of remarks.
Huh. What do you make of that? Why link the two? Is there a strategy there?
Well, the sources don't spell out his exact thinking, obviously,
Yeah.
but linking them, I mean, it could be a few things, couldn't it? Maybe it's strategic positioning, trying to appear like a leader, seeking peace both abroad and at home.
Addressing multiple fires at once?
Possibly. Or maybe it reflects where the pressure points are for his government right now, this external friction with a neighbor, and significant internal dissent from young people. Bundling the apologies could be an attempt to kind of reset the mood on both fronts. It suggests it wasn't just a simple, sorry, maybe some political calculation involved in the timing and the grouping.
Interesting. And how did that apology go down with the young Kenyans he addressed? Did they accept it?
Not universally, according to the reports. Some reactions noted were pretty dismissive,
Dismissive how?
basically saying an apology wasn't enough and insisting he should just resign. So that domestic part of the apology clearly landed very differently than the potential diplomatic impact of the apology aimed at Tanzania.
Right, so let's try and pull these threads together. We've gone from activists traveling to these serious claims, diplomatic protests, an online war, parliamentary fury, MPs getting harassed, and then this dual apology from President Ruto. What's the big takeaway here about the region, about politics in the digital age?
I think what's really striking is how blurred the lines became and how quickly. You had state actions, detention, deportation smashing right up against human rights claims.
Which then lit a fire online.
Exactly. Ignited this nationalist sentiment online, which wasn't just noise. It had real-world effects, like influencing parliamentary debates and leading to MPs literally getting their phones blown up.
It shows how potent social media is now in regional politics, doesn't it? It can bypass all the usual diplomatic channels and force leaders into reacting publicly, sometimes in ways you wouldn't expect.
Absolutely. Think about it. An issue that started with just a couple of activists ends up requiring a head of state to issue a public apology covering both foreign relations and domestic dissent. It really highlights how porous borders can feel online and how digital actions can force real high-level diplomatic responses.
And it brings it right back to you, the listener, doesn't it? Because this kind of incident really underlines that what happens online isn't some separate reality.
Not at all. It directly shapes international relations, it fuels political debate, it impacts individuals who get targeted, and it can push leaders to make major public statements. Those clicks, those posts, those messages, they can actually carry real diplomatic weight.
Which leads to a final thought, something to maybe chew on, building on that fascinating detail about the Tanzanian MP, Jessica Msambaravengu.
Ah, yes, the WhatsApp group suggestion.
Right. Remember, she didn't just complain about the flood of messages. She actively invited dialogue, suggested a group chat, said, counter ideas with ideas. What does that response tell us?
It's provocative, isn't it?
It really is. Does it suggest potential new ways or maybe new dangers of engaging across borders when things get tense digitally? If the official channels are strained or hostile, could this kind of direct, messy, citizen-to-politician digital interaction offer some kind of alternative?
Or does it just pour more gasoline on the fire?
Yeah.
Make things even more chaotic and harder to manage?
Exactly. It's something to really think about, especially as these digital spaces inevitably keep shaping how countries and all of us as citizens interact with each other across borders.